Good morning and welcome to English class, basic English class. Okay, in the last class we have observed that is in English in Kenya under colonial system. For the Kenyan students, they followed pyramidical structure. In pyramidical structure, at the primary level, at the beginning, all the students they were allowed. All the Kenyan students they were allowed. But for the second level, at the secondary level, only few after filtering, after conducting certain exam, only few were allowed, and the criteria to select or to filter the students, it was mainly credit marks in English. That is, the students, if they are going to get the chance to move to next level, mainly with the very good marks, credit marks in English. They should be very good in English. Then only they were allowed to the next level. And even at the college level, university level, the same method it was practiced. And here, since Gogiwa Thiango, he was very good at English, so he got the chance to go to higher education. He got the privilege of further education, higher education. Okay, but the point here, the writer he mainly says, since the education, it was mainly provided for the Kenyan students by the English government. So only literature, only English literature, the students they were forced to learn. So literary education was now determined by the dominant language while also reinforcing that dominance. Okay, in Kenya under colonial system, which was the dominant language, mainly English. So the students, Kenyan students, they were forced, they were made to learn, to study mainly English literature or the English literature or literature of the British. Orature, that is oral literature in Kenyan languages, completely stopped. Here orature, oral literature means the literature which was communicated orally rather than it was in writing. And Kenyan literature, it was not in writing, it mainly passed mouth to mouth, orally passed. So that Kenyan literature, these students, Gogiwa Thiango and his fellow beings, when they were very small, so at their home, they learned so many stories. They learned so many, that is mainly about Kenyan literature, but it was oral one. It was not in writing. But in college and in English schools in Kenya, that literature about Kenyan languages have been completely stopped. So in primary school, I now read simplified Dickens, Stevenson, alongside Rider Haggard, Jim Hawkins, Oliver Twist, Tom Broad. So that is in their school, these students, they were forced to study mainly English literature, mainly books written by English writers, like very famous writers of England, English, Charles Dickens, Stevenson, Rider Haggard, Jim Hawkins, Oliver Twist, Tom Broad. So since all these writers, they were English writers, they have written mainly about English. So their books, their literature has mainly depicted or mainly displayed, highlighted mainly English society, English culture, and also mainly about English tradition. So here these students, they were forced to learn about English, foreign literature, foreign culture, foreign society, lifestyle of England. That is, though here these students they were in Kenya, but there wasn't any scope for Kenyan tradition, Kenyan literature, Kenyan that is the society or about culture, but they were forced to learn mainly the foreign culture, mainly a strange culture, society which was completely strange, not a familiar one. So the writer very sadly says, he was not given a chance to study about the familiar animals, familiar culture like hare, leopard, lion, but mainly about these English writers. So even in secondary school, once again the English writers only, books of English writers like Scott, J.B. Shaw, Wide with Mo Rider Haggard, John Bacon, Alan Paton, Captain W.B. Jones, and even at the university at Makerere College, I read English from Chaucer to T.S. Eliot with touch of Graham Greene. Thus, that is in complete education. Though Ngugi Thiong'o, he got his education in the beginning. He got his education, did his education in Kenya, but there, since the school it was mainly run by the English, these students, whether they were interested or not, they were forced to study mainly about books written by English writers, and the books written by English writers, they mainly depicted or highlighted mainly that is English literature, English culture, English society, and these students, they were forced to learn mainly about foreign culture, foreign society, foreign lifestyle. Thus, thus language and literature were taking us further and further from us to others, from our world to other worlds. Since these children, they were forced to learn mainly foreign literature. So the writer says, Ngugi Thiong'o says, these beings, they were being separated from their familiar world. They were taken to a strange world, aloof world of British English, and these Kenyan children, they were mainly taken, they were separated from their culture, from their world, Kenyan culture, Kenyan world, but they were sent to another world, that is to the world of English literature. Thus, writer says they were taken to other from their world to other world. Their world means Kenyan literature, Kenyan tradition, Kenyan society. Other world means foreign literature, foreign society, that is English literature and English society. And the Ngugi Thiong'o, he started to write. He started his literary career, that is to started to write mainly during 1960 at the age of 22. But being and since his education, it was mainly in English, and since he studied mainly about English literature and being influenced by English writers like Charles Dickens, Stevenson, T.S. Eliot, Chaucer, and all those great English writers, he started his literary career mainly in English. That is, Ngugi Thiong'o, though he started to write during 1960 at the age of 22, but his writing, it was mainly in English. But later, almost that is when he was 40 years old, or during at the age of, at 1977, after getting the realization to write mainly in his Gikuyu, in his local language, not in English, he got that realization mainly in 1977. After that enlightenment, of course, this Ngugi Thiong'o, he started to write in his local language. Here the writer in this next para mainly explains the impact, the result when he started to write in Gikuyu, in his local language, Gikuyu and Swahili. The result, the impact, the effect which he faced when he started to write in his local language, that is Gikuyu. Okay, I started writing in the Gikuyu language in 1977 after 17 years of my involvement of Afro-European literature, in my case Afro-English literature. That is, he started to write in English literature during 1960, but in 1977, from 1977 onwards, he started to write mainly in Gikuyu. Okay, it was then that I collaborated with Gugiwa Midil, a very famous Kenyan, Zimbabwean playwright, social worker, and Ngugi Thiong'o, when he decided to write in his Gikuyu, he started to write mainly with the collaboration of one more very famous Kenyan Zimbabwean writer, Gugiwa Miril. And with the collaboration of Gugiwa Miril, he mainly helped in drafting a few few dramas, plays, poems, and other things. Here, the title of those dramas, poems, they are given, and since they are mainly in Kenyan language, so I am going to read mainly the English translation. That is, I will marry when I want, and devil on the grass, mother sing for me. Thus, that is the writer. He mainly says, with the collaboration of Gugi Wa Miri, he has written many books. And as I told, what was the result? That is and it is page number 29 for your reference. So the writer, he mainly says that when he started to write in his local language Gikuyu, he faced so many confrontation, opposition, faced so many questions. So wherever I have gone, particularly in Europe, I have been confronted with the question, why are you now writing in Gikuyu? I was why, that is one thing. I have been confronted with the question, why are you now writing in Gikuyu? Why do you now write in an African language? And in some academic quarters, I have been confronted with the rebuke. Why have you abandoned us? It was almost as if in choosing to write in Gikuyu, I was doing something abnormal. So when Gugiwa Thiago, he started to write mainly in Gikuyu. Actually, he started to, in the beginning, he has been writing mainly in English. He enriched English literature by his writing. So, since he was a very good writer, he had so many English readers as his fans. But when Gugiwa Thiago, he started to write mainly in Gikuyu, he faced so much opposition. That is, he had faced so many questions, and many English readers, they have been asking such questions as, why are you now writing in Gikuyu? Why do you now write in an African language? But here, Gugiwa Thiago, very proudly he says, his Gikuyu, it is his mother tongue, and he feels very happy. He feels very proud to write in mother tongue, and that is Gikuyu. The very fact that what common sense dictates in the literary practice of other culture is being questioned in an African writer is a measure of how far imperialism has distorted the views of African realities. So here, for all the English readers, Gikuyu, by starting to write in Gikuyu, Gugiwa Thiago, he has been committing a mistake. He has been doing something abnormal. So here Gugiwa Thiago, though he has been writing in his local language, but for the other English readers, Gugiwa Thiago, by starting to write in his own language, mother tongue Gikuyu, he has been committing a mistake. He has doing something abnormal. ಸೊ ಅಂದರೆ ಅವನು ತಂದೆ ಲೋಕಲ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ತಂದೆ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೆಯೋದು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ರೀಡರ್ಸಿಗೆ ಅದೇನಂತ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತು, ಅವನೇನೋ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮಿಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ, ಒಂದು ಎಬ್ನಾರ್ಮಲ್, ಡೂಯಿಂಗ್ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ಎಬ್ನಾರ್ಮಲ್. ಅಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ Gugiwa Thiago, ವೆನ್ ಹಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಟು ರೈಟ್ ಇನ್ local language, giving up his writing in English literature, he faced so many opposition. It has turned really it was almost as if in choosing to write in Gikuyu, I was doing something abnormal. But very proudly, Gugiwa Thiago, he mainly says, but Gikuyu is my mother tongue. Very proudly, very happily, Gugiwa Thiago says, Gikuyu is my mother tongue, The very fact that what common sense dictates in the literary practice of other culture is being questioned in an African writer is a measure of how far imperialism has distorted the view of African realities. And Africa actually enriches Europe. And here he narrates, discusses one more point, Gugiwa Thiago, that is actually that is the European countries or the British Empire has been enriched mainly by Africa, mainly by most of its colonies, mainly by African raw materials, mainly that is the wealth, natural and human resource they have used, by using natural and human resources. The European countries, the British Empire has been completely enriched. They have become very strong. But Africa, the Africans, they were forced to believe that Europe is there to rescue, to save Africans from the poverty. The real fact, the European countries, the British Empire has been enriched, have become very strong, mainly with the help of Africa's raw materials, mainly with the wealth of Africa and natural and human resource of Africa. But these Africans, they were forced to believe that these Africans, they were saved. Their poverty has been saved. They were able to escape from poverty mainly with the help of the British. So Africa's natural human resource continue to develop Europe and America, but Africa is made to feel grateful for aid from the same quarters that still sit on the back of the continent. Africa even produces intellectuals who now rationalize this upside down way of looking at Africa. Thus the writer mainly says, though many of the African writers, they enriched, they contributed to English literature, but still the British, they were of the opinion, these African writers, they were enjoying every prestige, they were enjoying every status mainly because of English, mainly because of British Empire. Thus here the writer once again very sadly says, though Africa it has enriched, and because with the wealth of Africa, this British Empire, European countries have become very rich, but these Africans, they were forced to believe, yes, that is these Africans in each and every step, they were being helped, not only ordinary Africans, but even African writers, they were forced to believe in each and every step, they were mainly helped by the British Empire. Thus that wrong view, it was mainly enforced on these Africans. Mainly they were treated as the slaves. They were under that colonial system of the British, and they were very badly treated by the British Empire. And here the writer Gugiwa Thiago, later realizing that particular point, he wants to fight against the British Empire. Thus that is decolonizing the mind, means going away from the British culture. Okay, next part to be continued in the next class. Okay, thank you, take care.